Life is so beautiful. And what makes it so beautiful is when you look me in my eyes and you told me that you love me. And I lied and told you I accept that love.
Inside one of those rooms was his mother, his mother's boyfriend, and two young juvenile sisters. He walked into that hotel room, looked at the mother and said, "I'm sorry." She asked, "What did you do?" And he shot her 3 times in front of the boyfriend and these two innocent young juveniles.
On the night of June 24th, 2024, a chilling chain of events unfolded across Manatee County in Florida, one that left 3 women dead, an entire family shattered, and a community struggling to comprehend the unthinkable. What began as an ordinary summer evening quickly turned into a calculated series of executions. The victims weren't random strangers. They were the killer's own family, his mother, a cousin, and a former lover's partner. The women were Sequoia Bryce, Titimaisha Scott, and Sherelle Carter, who were shot down by 28-year-old Javante Bryce. But the most disturbing part of the story, it wasn't just about what Javante did. It was what he may have been trying to hide. These 3 women had discovered something that he had spent a very long time keeping a secret. And it was a secret that he was ready to kill anyone for. He was not ready to let anyone who found out remain alive. These are the lives and deaths of Sequoia Starquez Jonquila Bryce, Titimaisha Scott, and Sherelle Carter. This terrible incident unfolded in Manatee County in Florida. This county sits along Florida's western Gulf Coast, offering a mix of suburban charm, waterfront parks, and a growing, family-friendly population. In 2024, crime data painted a sobering picture. The county's violent crime rate averaged around 743 incidents per 100 residents. That's nearly 600% higher than the national average. And these women contributed to this unfortunate statistic. The victims were women known for their warmth, energy, and love for their families. Born in 1995, Sequoia Starquez Jonquila Bryce, affectionately known as Koya or Coco, was a vibrant woman whose energy left an impression on everyone she met. She was 29 years old at the time of her death and a proud native of Manatee County. Her mother, Matilda Dubois, described her as a free spirit, always smiling, always laughing, and always calling. In fact, they were so close that Sequoia would phone her mom up to 10 times a day just to talk about life. She had 5 siblings and 2 young sons, Troy and Tori, who were her world. Her motivation to become a certified nursing assistant and eventually a registered nurse stemmed from her desire to build a better life for them. She had just started working at a rehabilitation center in Bradenton, and although the job was demanding, she often talked about her dreams of progressing in the medical field. Family meant everything to Sequoia. As a child, she spent many of her formative years with her grandparents, Horace and Bertha Reeves. She prioritized even Javante, her cousin, who had recently begun to act strangely and raised her concerns.
As my trust fades away in the midnight dust. My love is enveloped, yearning for hope from the angels who dance freely in waters of the oceans when the sunset sets. Morning dew turns into frozen dew due to the bees running out of honeydew. Butterflies becoming angry due to the decreasing of dragonflies. I adorn the ornament of life until life stings like a hornet. Now my madness sings like a hurricane. My heart and brain filled with trauma and pain. Life is heavy and heaven is scary. What goes up must comes down.
Instead of preparing for a celebration, the family would soon be planning her funeral. Sequoia's birthday was fast approaching, and her grandparents were planning a surprise for her with a trip to Washington, D.C. for her 30th birthday. They'd even chosen a special silver charm bracelet to mark the occasion, a symbol of love that would, sadly, never be given to her. Titimaisha Pi Scott, 48, was Javante's mother, a woman known for her generosity, love of cooking, and devotion to her large family. which included 12 children and 7 grandchildren. She had recently given her life to her faith, as she enjoyed spending time with loved ones and occasionally visiting the casino. She was deeply loved not only by her children, but also by the many people who considered her a pillar in their lives. Sherelle Pig Carter, 31, was Gervonta's ex-girlfriend. She was a light in every room she entered. Her friends and colleagues described her as having impeccable character and a warmth that drew people in. She worked as an administrative assistant and had a young son named Carson. For those who knew her, her death felt both unimaginable and senseless. These 3 women were not random victims. Each had a personal connection to Gervonta. Sequoia was his cousin, Titi Maisha was his mother, and Sherelle was his ex-girlfriend. These connections made the violence that would unfold all the more shocking. But Gervonta already had issues of his own. Gervonta had a documented history of domestic violence, with court records showing he was arrested in 2022 and again in 2023. One of the charges, domestic battery by strangulation, was later dropped. He also had multiple run-ins with law enforcement involving physical altercations, resisting arrest, and mental health episodes. According to officials, Gervonta had previously harmed himself under distressing circumstances. In one instance, he was found with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In another, he posted concerning messages on social media about his children and his own future. Each time, authorities intervened, placing him under mental health holds and issuing risk protection orders to restrict his access to firearms. But those orders eventually expired, and no new intervention was in place to stop him. And at some point during all this, Gervonta seemed to lose control completely. He began posting dark poetry online. Some entries hinted at depression, betrayal, and emotional torment. Others were more ominous, alluding to vengeance, secrets, and love turned bitter. There were references to family dysfunction, to conflicted identity, and to people he felt had wronged him. Soon, he put all his thoughts into action. On June 24th, 2024, it all started just hours after what seemed like a perfect day. Sequoia had gone to a family cookout in Palmetto. Earlier that morning, she had stopped by her mother's house to say goodbye, and Matilda remembers how cheerful and content her daughter had been. But everything changed in an instant. At around 9 p.m., Gervonta's first stop was the Palmetto Trace Apartments, where his sister and an ex-girlfriend, who was also the mother of one of his 12 children, were staying. According to Sheriff Rick Wells, Gervonta walked into the apartment and disrupted everything. In a chilling moment of clarity, he looked at his ex and said that he had to kill her. But then, something unexpected happened. His sister managed to talk him down. Somehow, she was able to defuse the situation just long enough for Gervonta to walk away, at least for the moment. But that would only delay the bloodshed. At 9:17 p.m., Gervonta arrived at a Motel 6 located on 67th Street, Circle East in Bradenton. Inside the room were his 48-year-old mother, Titi Maisha Scott, her boyfriend, and 2 of his younger sisters, both juveniles. Without warning, Gervonta stepped inside, looked his mother in the eyes, and deeply apologized to her. Witnesses said Titi Maisha was confused and immediately asked him what he had done. She never saw his response coming. He had no more words for her, only one single action. Before she could get an answer, Gervonta pulled out a revolver and shot her 3 times. The room erupted in chaos. One neighbor, a Marine veteran, later described the pandemonium. His family heard the screams from the room above and rushed in to try to save Titi Maisha. He found her pinned between the bed and the wall, struggling to breathe. He stayed with her until paramedics arrived, but the damage was done. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Titi Maisha Scott, remembered for her love of cooking, her devotion to family, and her joyful spirit, had just spent her final moments witnessing something no mother should ever see, the complete unraveling of her own child. But the carnage didn't end there. Roughly 30 minutes later, at around 9:45 p.m., Gervonta arrived at a home in the 900 block of 26th Street, Court East in Palmetto, where Sequoia was attending a neighborhood cookout. She had been saying her goodbyes and was walking toward her SUV, preparing to leave. Right at that moment, she spotted her cousin approaching and knew something was wrong. And before she could even process what was happening, he pulled the trigger. Neighbors reported hearing gunshots followed by screams. One eyewitness saw 2 people rush towards Sequoia, who had collapsed near her vehicle. She was the second woman in the family to die that night, and she wouldn't be the last. Just when it seemed like the horror might stop, Javante drove to a third location. This was a residence in the 4800 block of 51st Street East in Bradenton. There, an ex-girlfriend lived with her new partner, 31-year-old Sherelle Carter. What happened next unfolded quickly. Javante confronted the two women. He didn't shoot his ex. Instead, he turned his rage toward her partner. Sherelle was shot and killed almost instantly. By now, law enforcement agencies across Florida were on high alert. 3 women, all connected to the same man, had been murdered in less than an hour, and the killer was still on the move. But so were the police. Police intervention in this case unfolded rapidly because the violence occurred so fast, so relentlessly, that law enforcement barely had time to react before it was already too late. At 9:17 p.m. on the night of June 24th, 2024, deputies from the Manatee County Sheriff's Office were dispatched to the Motel 6 at 660 67th Street Circle East in Bradenton. The emergency call reported that a woman had been shot in front of her children and her partner. That woman was 48-year-old Titi Maisha Scott, the mother of the shooter, Javante Bryce. When deputies arrived, they found Titi Maisha gravely injured, suffering from 3 gunshot wounds. Her 2 young daughters and a boyfriend were visibly traumatized, having witnessed every second of the horrifying encounter. Despite the rapid response, it was too late. Titi Maisha was pronounced dead on the scene. But that was only the beginning of what deputies would come to understand as a multi-location killing spree. Just 28 minutes later, another chilling call came in. This time it was from 26th Street Court East in Palmetto. The report was eerily similar. A woman shot, this time while getting into her SUV outside a cookout. The victim was later identified as 29-year-old Sequoia Starquez Jonquilla Bryce, Javante's cousin. Officers from the Palmetto Police Department were first to arrive, immediately attempting life-saving measures. Sequoia was still breathing, but her injuries were extensive. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital. An hour later, she succumbed to her wounds. Authorities now had 2 active murder scenes, but within minutes, a third would emerge. At 10:04 p.m., law enforcement received yet another call. This time, the scene was in Bradenton on the 4800 block of 51st Street East, where a woman named Sherelle Carter, age 31, was found dead from gunfire. Sherelle, known to loved ones as a bright, energetic woman, was the new partner of one of Javante's ex-girlfriends. Officers confirmed the shooter had fled before they arrived, but multiple witnesses once again named Javante Bryce as the suspect. It was now clear that Manatee County was dealing with not just a single murder, but a coordinated spree across 3 cities in less than an hour. And yet, there was still more to uncover.
3 women were killed in a triple shooting. This is over in Manatee County, not far from the Tampa-St. Petersburg area. And those killed include the mother and cousin of the man deputies believe pulled the trigger. This all happening overnight, and the Manatee County Sheriff is joining now to give an update.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Before I get started, just wanted to say that our thoughts and our prayers go out to the families of the victims of this tragic event. We pray that God watches over them during this very, very tragic time. Just want to try to give you a timeline of the events that took place last night. And before I get started, I really want to show you the killer himself, the one that is responsible for 3 homicides in Manatee County last night. His name is Javante Bryce. He is 28 years of age. He is the one that went on the spree last night in Manatee County. So we believe initially that this all started sometime before 9 o'clock when Mr. Bryce traveled to the Palmetto Trace apartments in Palmetto, in the city of Palmetto. Inside one of those apartments was his sister and a mother of one of the many children that Mr. Bryce has. When he walked into the apartment, he looked at the ex-girlfriend and said, "I have to kill you." Somehow, the sister was able to talk him down and talk him out of him shooting this ex-girlfriend. She later told investigators that he was acting very strange, not really sure what was going on with him. At 9:17 p.m., that we know that he traveled to the Motel 6 in East Bradenton. Inside one of those rooms was his mother's boyfriend, and two young juvenile sisters. He walked into that hotel room, looked at the mother and said, "I'm sorry." She asked, "What did you do?" And he shot her 3 times in front of the boyfriend and these two innocent young juveniles. He then travels into Palmetto to the 900 block of 26th Street East. One of his cousins was at a cookout at this residence. She's starting to get into her vehicle to leave. He then shoots her at that location. She later dies about an hour after this at a local hospital. We then have him traveling into the city of Bradenton over the Green Bridge. And at roughly 10:04 p.m., he travels to a location in the city of Bradenton, the 4800 block of 51st Street East. This is a residence where another ex-girlfriend lives and her now new partner. He does not shoot or kill the girlfriend, but he shoots and kills the new partner. So at this point, we now have 3 homicide scenes and also an ag assault scene at Palmetto Trace. Investigators are constantly getting information. We know right away that the suspect is Javante Bryce.
As detectives pieced together the timeline, they began to realize that the rampage may have actually started earlier than the Motel 6 shooting. Around 8:53 p.m., Javante posted disturbing updates on Facebook, expressing a string of cryptic, emotional statements about family, love, betrayal, and regret. In one post, he tagged Sequoia with an ominous message. In another, he referenced one of his exes with dark overtones. To authorities, these weren't just cryptic thoughts, they were warnings of what was to come. But what detectives discovered next would change everything. Through eyewitness testimony and surveillance footage, investigators confirmed that Javante had first visited the Palmetto Trace apartments shortly before 9 p.m. There, he encountered his sister and an ex-girlfriend, who was also the mother of one of his children. But just when it seemed like tragedy was unavoidable, his sister intervened. Javante walked away, but whatever had pushed him to the edge hadn't gone away. In fact, it was only growing darker. Now, armed with a timeline of events and multiple witness accounts, law enforcement quickly issued a statewide BOLO, a be-on-the-lookout alert, for Javante's vehicle. The suspect had fled after the third shooting, and based on disturbing comments made to family and on social media, authorities believed he was headed north, possibly to Georgia, to target yet another ex-girlfriend. Time was running out, but then there was a break in the case. In the early morning hours of June 25th, deputies in Hamilton County, Florida, spotted the vehicle traveling northbound on I-75, roughly 30 miles from the Georgia state line. A felony traffic stop was initiated. Deputies confirmed a second person, a woman, was also in the vehicle, though she appeared unharmed. But what happened next shocked even the most experienced law enforcement on the scene. As deputies ordered Javante out of the car, he opened fire, shooting at officers without hesitation. Deputies returned fire, immediately striking him fatally. Javante collapsed near his vehicle, and the threat that had gripped multiple communities in terror ended in an instant. No deputies were injured in the exchange, and the unidentified female passenger was safely detained for questioning. Authorities believe she had been with Javante throughout the night, possibly during the entire string of shootings. But even with Javante now deceased, the investigation was far from over.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lauren St. Germain.
And I'm Paul Legrone. Tonight, there are questions about what caused a Manatee County man to go on this killing spree and take the lives of 3 women, including his own mother. We have all the 3 crime scenes here laid out on this map in Manatee County. The sheriff today telling us that 28-year-old Javante Bryce drove from home to home, killing those 3 women before he made a run for it all the way up to the Florida-Georgia line, where he then got into a shootout with cops who killed him, bringing his night of violence to an end. And tonight, ABC Action News reporter J.D. Williams with brand new details on how this killing spree unfolded scene by scene and hour by hour.
And tonight, she's walking us through all 3 scenes. She also spoke with people who saw the aftermath of the shootings.
Here in Bradenton is one of the multiple locations where Javante Bryce allegedly shot and killed someone. 3 locations where someone died, another an aggravated assault, but it all ended in a police shooting in Hamilton County right before the Florida-Georgia border.
We're getting a 33 with injuries at Motel 6. There was a female that was in the back.
I'm a little still shaken up. Sleep is an issue.
As David Valentin was settling in for the night at the Motel 6 in Bradenton, the sound of gunshots startled him. He described how he tried to save the woman in the room 1 floor above him from dying.
And then I started hearing the daughter screaming, "Help me, help me. My mom's been shot. So I told my son to give me towels. I ran out the door, ran upstairs, and ran in there, and that's when I found out that it was her son that shot her.
Despite his efforts to save her, Tanisha Scott died from multiple gunshot wounds.
He walked into that hotel room, looked at the mother and said, "I'm sorry." She asked, "What did you do?" And he shot her 3 times.
Manatee Sheriff Rick Wells says she was just one of the victims of her own son, Javante Bryce's violent spree Monday night. Sheriff Wells says it started with an aggravated assault. Then Bryce killed his mother at the Motel 6. Next, he went to this house in Palmetto, where he killed his cousin, Sequoia Bryce. Next-door neighbor John Singh was on his porch when that shooting happened.
There's always action, something going on over there. And then, the police showed up and stuff, and but my reaction, I knew something bad happened.
From there, Sheriff Wells says Bryce made his way to this apartment complex in Bradenton, where he shot and killed his ex-girlfriend's new partner, Sherelle Carter. Deputies soon realized Bryce's next target was across state lines in Georgia, but Hamilton County deputies stopped him at the state line.
He immediately gets out of the car and starts firing upon them. They return fire and kill him there in Hamilton County.
We also learned there was a woman in the car with Bryce when he was shot and killed by deputies. Hamilton County deputies did question her, and they say that she's not facing charges on their end, but Manatee County Sheriff's Office said they also plan on questioning her as well. FDLE is investigating the shooting that happened over in Hamilton County, but as for all of the shootings that happened here in Manatee, that's all being investigated by the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. Reporting in Manatee, Jada Williams, ABC Action News.
Back in Manatee County, detectives began digging deeper into Javante's past. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture of escalating instability and unresolved emotional trauma. But one detail didn't add up, and it changed everything. Despite all the warning signs, despite the prior arrests and hospitalizations, no one seemed to know how far Javante was willing to go. By the time police understood the full scope of his plan, 3 women were already dead. 2 of them his blood relatives, 1 the partner of a former girlfriend. All were murdered within a 45-minute window. The rampage was calculated, emotionally fueled, and deeply personal. But the question remained, why? What would drive a man to erase nearly his entire support system, to turn on his mother, his cousin, and a woman who may have had nothing to do with his past except for who she loved? Some people believe that the women had discovered that he was living a double life. Rumors began to fly that he might have been bisexual and was trying to suppress and hide this side of himself, but his victims had found out. There would be no trial, no courtroom drama, no sentencing hearing, because the man responsible for the triple murder was dead, killed during a shootout with deputies hours after his own killing spree began. For the families of the victims, this meant there would be no justice system to witness, no official reckoning, no chance to hear a verdict or deliver a victim impact statement in court. Instead, they were left with pain, unanswered questions, and a haunting reality that no amount of investigation would truly explain what Javante Bryce was thinking in his final hours. And while law enforcement continued to comb through his social media, digital history, and past mental health records, the legal chapter of this tragedy was already closed before it could begin. But for the families, grief was just beginning. On Saturday, July 6, 2024, loved ones gathered at First Community Church of God in Christ to honor Titi Maisha Scott, the 48-year-old woman who had brought Javante into this world and was later killed by him inside a Motel 6. She was a mother, a partner, a sister, and a friend, and in a cruel twist of fate, her life was taken by the very person she had once nurtured and protected. Witnesses say the funeral service was filled with both sorrow and celebration. Family members clutched each other, sobbing quietly while Gospel music played in the background. Photographs of Titi Maisha smiling and laughing were placed near the pulpit, surrounded by white flowers. But the most difficult part? Her two youngest daughters had witnessed her final moments and now had to mourn her from the front row. Meanwhile, Sequoia Bryce's visitation was held at Westside Funeral Home in Palmetto on Friday, June 28th, followed by a celebration of life on Saturday at Happy Gospel Church in Bradenton. The service began at 1 p.m., and despite the weight of grief, the atmosphere was filled with stories of joy, laughter, and remembrance. Sequoia, affectionately known as Coco or Koya, had just celebrated her 29th birthday at the Siesta Key Drum Circle the day before she was killed. She was described by everyone who knew her as vibrant, generous, and full of life. She loved being a mother to her two sons, Troy and Tori. Her kids had recently lost their father to medical complications. Now, they were orphans. And that's when the community stepped in. A GoFundMe campaign was created to help cover funeral expenses and ensure Sequoia's boys would be cared for in the long term. The fundraiser became a rallying point for grieving friends, neighbors, and strangers who simply wanted to ease the family's burden. In the obituary for Sherelle Carter, known to some as Pig, loved ones described her as a light in every room. She was warm, loving, and full of energy. A mother to a young son named Carson. Sherelle's death shocked those who knew her and devastated her partner who had been in the home that night when the shooting occurred. The public visitation was held for Sherelle at Sarasota Potter's house on Saturday from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. with a funeral service immediately after. She was buried at Palms Memorial Park. It was a week filled with funerals, but what made it all more devastating was the feeling that this could have been prevented. Javante Price had a long history of mental health struggles, domestic violence, and emotional instability. His own sister told investigators that he had previously harmed himself. Police records confirmed he had been Baker acted, meaning he had been involuntarily hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation. He was under risk protection orders, legal tools designed to temporarily remove guns from those deemed dangerous to themselves or others. But those orders had expired and no one intervened in time. Some believe his motive was rooted in fear, that secrets about his personal life were at risk of being exposed. Others believed his untreated mental health crisis drove him into a state of paranoia and rage. There were even rumors about family conflict, alleged relationships, and betrayal. But officially, the Manatee County Sheriff's Office had stated there were no confirmed motives. They do not know what set this man off, and we may never know. But one thing is clear, the signs were there. If you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of harm or facing emotional instability, please don't ignore the signs. There are resources, hotlines, and community programs ready to help. Speak up, reach out, share what you see before tragedy strikes. If you're a survivor of domestic violence or mental health trauma, know this: you're not alone. And if you've ever felt like you couldn't speak out, whether out of fear, shame, or confusion, this is your reminder that your voice could save a life. We honor the memories of Sequoia, Titi Maisha, and Sherelle, and we grieve for the children they left behind. Let us know what you think in the comments section below.